Item number 5 is recall Yuba City rate adjustment for rate year 2016 and related amendment to the 2011 collection service agreement, presented by our city manager, Mr. Krager.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, good evening. You see this item once a year in accordance with your collection service agreement with Recology. There are adjustments made. Every fourth year there's a detailed rate adjustment, which we experienced last year. In the interim years there are refuse rate adjustments, which is an index of different factors that are listed in the staff report. But before I proceed, I would like to point out the abundance of Recology people who we have in our audience this evening. You've already heard from Jackie Soman. We have Mike Leggins. We have Tom Norris. We have Ed Farewell. And we have Phil Graham from Ostrom Road. We also have from the Regional Waste Management Authority, Keith Martin, who really get all the administrators give a lot of credit to for keeping a close kind of finger on the pulse of what's going on, and it effectively serves as our capable staff person who helps all of the jurisdictions through this process, and we're thankful for that. The public hearing this evening is in consideration of a 2% rate adjustment. 1.44% of that rate adjustment is attributable to the refuse rate adjustment that I referenced a moment ago. 0.56 of the adjustment is designated for certain capital improvement projects that have been requested by Recology. Mike Leggins does have a presentation for you this evening to walk you through some of those capital improvement projects and why this funding is necessary. And if you don't have any questions for me right now, I'd suggest that Mike come up and give you a brief presentation, and then I will be back as well. Is that
any questions of Mr. Krager right now?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve, and Vice Mayor and council members. I'm happy to be here just to talk about what Steve had mentioned as far as the different projects that are required. So I think the main thing that we're working with right now is in our compost facility, and that's basically the water board has required that we deal with the water in a much more aggressive manner than we have in the past. And so last year we worked on a project that included a bunch of what we call baker tanks, and it's a large number of them. It's not the most efficient way to operate. So this year we're moving towards a more operationally friendly system that allows us to work and keep our costs down for the future. So that sorry. Could you go back one, please? So anyway, the different areas are the southern area, which we talked about last year, and also the Feather River Organics. So go ahead and move to the next one. What we're changing this year is we're actually moving the property over into an area what we call the hog farm, and that's an area that doesn't have any waste in it. It's an area that was used as a borrow source in the past, and that's where we're going to basically place 2 large above ground tanks. Next. So that's mainly the biggest project. The second one is basically the reason why we have to do all these is because of the waste discharge requirements that were actually just recently approved by the water board, and that was at the end of July or just last month. Throughout the year, we were working very closely with the water board on all these different requirements, and we put a lot of resources out there to control what they're going to require. But we ended up with the requirements that were approved in July, and I think we actually were successful in reducing some of the requirements, but obviously not all of them. This is an interesting area, an interesting site that has, it's sitting on an old landfill. And basically the regulations are designed to bring us up to a level that hasn't been required over the past few years. So it's bringing up, it's just raising the standard that we have to meet. So what we have to do at the site to the new under the new waste discharge requirements, and also under the new stormwater industrial general permit that was also effective July 1st of this year. And so over the last year, we've been working closely with the Water Board to just define what projects we really felt like that were needed. So they include grading, the site to keep it from ponding, and the whole idea is to keep water from entering into the old landfill. So any kind of ponding, grading, making sure the drainage drains quickly during a storm event. A lot of the stormwater improvements that we're going to include are basically designed to help us reduce the constituent levels of the liquid that's going down into the stormwater system. We've gone ahead and evaluated and repaired a lot of the underground piping. We did a lot of that last year. We found other areas that we have to go ahead and bring up to standard as well. And obviously, what I mentioned is the largest one that's impacting us is the way that we deal with our stormwater that gets into the compost area. Next one. So this is just, I know it's a lot of lines and different things like that, but it's basically what we have to do is work on grading the site so it drains well. Next one. And I'm going to go through these very quickly. These are just some of the areas last winter that we made some improvements, but there are other improvements that we're kind of chasing in a way, and we feel like we've picked up most of those this year. So next one, another example, another example, another example. Now this one is some of the larger projects that to deal with the stormwater. What's required under the stormwater regulations is we need to put awnings over the top of one of them is an awning that has to go over our C&D line. In that area, there's a lot of ponding. There's a lot of debris that gets sediment that gets washed off. That sediment has different constituents in it, so we're trying to limit how much of that sediment goes off site. The other part is basically we had a wash rack that's basically sinking as we in an old landfill part. So a lot of that is an area that we have to basically repair, and so we need to move our truck wash facility. That's one of them. The other major one is putting an awning over the maintenance facility. Next. So this is an example of some of the additional grading that we have to do near the maintenance facility. Next. Again, in the facility near the maintenance facility. Next. Again, another one near the maintenance facility. This is the old wash rack that we've gone ahead and moved the bin cleaning area, and that has to be repaired. Again, another grading project. Next. So mainly the two biggest projects that we have are basically putting a canopy or awning over the C&D line, as I mentioned. The other one is over the maintenance shop, and the reason for that is, again, there's ponding in that area. There's a lot of debris and sediment that gets washed off that affects the constituents that of keeping us our effluent within a reasonable level established by the Water Board. Next. Again, another. This is the ponding area that is near the C&D line. Again, near the C&D line, and this is near the maintenance line. You can see behind that tote there's some ponding water. So it's actually the awning will keep that flowing in the right direction. Next, again, another ponding near our maintenance facility. So this is really the one I talked about first. This is basically we needed to for the compost facility, we needed to increase the amount of storage that we have on site. And again, the new regulations have required this. It also increased the size of our conveyance system around the site. So really, a lot of these projects we feel like are going to bring us up to a level that's basically going to put us in more of a maintenance type mode from now on. And again, we spent a lot of time working with the water board to try and keep the requirement down as reasonably as much as possible, and spent a lot of resources with the company to make that happen. And again, I just wanted to stress that we did have another thing that's important, and it's the reason that we need to put these projects in place is we did, unfortunately experience a fine last year related to a discharge. And we did go to the water board to appeal that, and we were unsuccessful. So it's real important for the water board and for us to bring these projects, into place and to keep us within compliance with the water board. And the other part of all this too, as you can imagine, we're spending a lot of money. We have, but we're keeping the cost down as much as possible. Most of the work is being done here locally with local contractors and local engineers and permitting specialists. For the future, it's allowed us to just maybe rethink the possibility of, maybe it's worthwhile relocating the place. So so really just looking at the different options that we may have. Everything's on the table at this point. So go ahead next. This is actually the tanks that we're planning on putting into the hog farm next. And that's the compost facility. You may be able to see on the lower part of this, and also on the upper part. It's real small, I know, but that's where the Baker tanks are. So basically, we're going to basically take those items out because it is a costly way to do wastewater management. Next. So that completes what I had to say. Open it up for any questions you might have.
Any questions of Mike?
To the Vice Chair, not really questions, just a couple of comments. So we're increasing it 2%, which is basically 52 cents for the 32 gallons, which is going to generate about $100,000 per year, based upon the report. The last time I thought we did something, I couldn't remember, a few years back, or was it about 2 years ago? Steve, you maybe help us. I think the funds that were generated were used to repave the road going into the levee or into the main facility. Does that seem about correct?
I think the way, yeah.
Okay. I'm volunteering to take it from Mike since Mike got here about a year ago, and so he may have done his homework on the past. But those of us who are around, the Rate Stabilization and Capitalization Fund set up in around 2008 set aside monies to stay out of the rate base, so we wouldn't experience severe fluctuations from year to year. There have been a series of capital projects. One of those projects is the road into the levee road into the facility that was paved a number of years ago. There have been other projects as well that have been drawn from that fund. And this is an example where there have been times where now this fund, I think the staff report states, is about $2.2 or $2.3 million. And it's been easy to criticize and say, why are you accumulating all this money for nothing? And we've said, sooner or later there will be large projects that need to be funded, and these it's come home to roost. And these are the types of projects. In fact, to the degree, as Mike's pointed out, some of these projects, the total list is upwards of $3 million, over $3 million. And so not only is it necessary to use the funding that's been set aside in that fund, but also set aside an additional 0.56% of the 2%. And just as a point of clarification as well, know that that 1% of the money is attributable to franchise fee increase, the increment in franchise fees that is being applied by all of the jurisdictions. In fact, I think some of the jurisdictions might even be increasing it by more than amount of 1%. We are, to toot our horn a little bit, we are unique as we're the jurisdiction that places the money to replace road and specifically for waste-related costs. And we don't place it in the general fund. So long answer for a short question.
Just another quick question. If all options are on the table and there's a possibility of relocation of the site somewhere else, then why spend the $2.33 million that's in the account to update this facility when there may be better and cheaper options to do something else?
Well, that's what we're right now. We don't. I think with any option that you look for the future, and to develop any other option, and really there's really no other existing option, and you really to develop a new site, it takes about 10 years to permit. I think we've experienced that, and that's the experience within the industry, and so really. This site is a site that's got to be available for the next 10 years, I think, in looking forward to a possibility of a different place. And again, I say all options are on the table, and I think even staying at the existing site is one of those options that you'd want to look at. And I think because of the experience that we've had with the water board over the last 2 years, I think we're getting a little bit more clarity as to exactly what they're going to want at this site. It's going to make it easier for us to develop a maintenance schedule for this site. And I think, again, I believe it's, in my experience, is that it is going to take, really about 10 years, anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So even though it's unfortunate that we have to spend this money, we would have to do it anyway. And we're just trying to keep it at the most, efficient manner, cost-efficient manner.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cleveland.
I was going to discuss after. I was thinking of just waiting until after public hearing, but I have some questions before I actually come to my thoughts and recommendations. Where does most of the highest percent of the green waste come from in this region? Sutter County, Yuba County, where does it come from mostly?
I believe most of it is coming from Yuba County, and I believe 40% comes from, well, actually, the city is about 40%.
Yuba City.
So I think it's probably an even split if you had to add the county in. Okay. And I could get that for you in better numbers.
Okay, and then and I know one of the options is discussed is Ostrom Road, sending it all the way out there. I think there's some to that facility, but increased traffic around Wheatland, the longer distances, cost of fuels and wear and tear on vehicles and all like that. That would be definitely an increased cost. Would it not?
We haven't come up with the cost on that, but
I mean, just a flat out.
Yeah, just
distances.
It kind of makes sense. It actually kind of makes sense, but I think what we're doing at this particular facility is probably getting us closer to what the costs are going to be, in the future.
And these questions are all leading to just an idea. I know that I've watched other communities have to do this, and they've done things to where they have actually laid down grading of cement, concrete cement, made all their process have to be on top of course, that's very heavy and thick, costly. And then it grades off into collection ponds to where they can scrape and clean and contain a lot of this. And I just, in the area where it is now, that's, sorry, but sinking sand, sinking ground. It's a bad situation at best because it's on old landfill. There will always be high level of maintenance where when you get into solid ground, you will not have that. And it would be much better. I would just highly recommend that another site be selected for green waste collection, even if it's not Sutter County area, because of Yuba City or whatever. Someplace where it can be utilized in a way on solid ground and more centrally located. I know it's costs, but I think it needs to be looked at very carefully. Plus, people would be more readily wanting to come by and pick it up if it's more convenient for them to pick up. There's many different facets I know involved in this process. So that's just one of the ideas that I would have, but get someplace in a location in the future that is much more centrally located, or at least more convenient and on solid ground, where and with land where it can drain off into. You get in there, you scrape it up. A lot of clay ground around here. It doesn't go through the clay, and it evaporates off. Big pondings and things like that, where you won't have discharge problems, or virtually won't have them with the right design and stuff. So I know that, but when we get to that point, we need to look at that. Just the way I feel about it.
That's a good point, and like I mentioned, I think we're looking at all the options are on the table, and that is a good point.
That's it.
And before we open it for public hearing, I guess I'll ask the one question that comes to my mind every time I drive out to the facility. Was out there on, I think it was Friday, and experienced some of the current work being done to reinforce some of the concrete road structure and things like that. So my question is really based around, and that looks like an expensive project, just a short little piece of concrete that's being replaced. Appears to be very thick, trying to stabilize it, rebar, the whole 9 yards. I can only imagine that it's going to, much of that needs to be replaced around the pit facility as I drive out there. A lot of it's been crumbled and broken. What are your projections ongoing, looking into the 10-year window? What Band-Aid fixes are going to be required, ballpark, to stay on this property and continue to do these piece by piece repairs, barring any intervention from the state to add more regulations and things like that?
Well, I think that's one of the things that we're going to look at in this, kind of like a long term, where can we go? But we feel like the improvements that we're going to make this year is going to bring it back into kind of a maintenance type mode. And we're doing some of those repairs that you mentioned, and I think we're actually going to be probably between $200,000 to $300,000 a year, which is already something that has been anticipated in the rates currently. So I think I really feel like we're going to get to a place where the level is high enough to where we're going to be kind of in a maintenance mode from now on. And again, it's been kind of like the perfect storm as far as regulations have on this site. So.
Well, the design of the new facility in your green waste and all that collection, should we end up with the anticipated catastrophic storms that we hope come inbound? What are these? At what level are these being designed at?
Well, the prescriptive level from the water board is basically a 25-year storm event. The conveyance system is required to be a greater event, a 100-year storm event. So because of where we're located, we're kind of above the high level of the the levees itself. I think that's going to be pretty well. The design is going to cover us for really any kind of contingency. But if we do have that catastrophic event, we're sitting in the hog farm, which is kind of a pond in itself. So it would keep liquids from getting into the Yuba River. So I think you know, it's in that respect, we're going to be pretty well protected.
Any other questions from the council before I open it to the public? This is a public hearing. We'll open it to the public. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter specifically can come up, address the council and the attending public. We'll do a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Seeing no one rushing to the podium to speak to it, we'll close the public hearing. And if anyone has any further questions of Mr. Krager for clarification, any other comments? Pleasure of the council.
To the Vice Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a recommendation to approve staff's recommendation for A and B.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, it sounded like it was unanimous to me. We can bring the mayor back. Thank you very much.
Somebody go wake him up.
Thank you.